Thanks very much. It's really good to be here in Dundee, actually, and when I knew that I was going to be presenting in Dundee, I did some research about what Dundee is famous for, and I saw that there'd been some great literary greats that had been part of the city, so Robert Burns, Mary Shelley, Dennis the Menace, and Desperate Dan. So I knew I was coming to the right place. So I'm Stephen Miller, I'm Research Manager at Design Council, and what I'm going to talk about today is the economic value of design to the UK and to Scotland, based on some research we did last year called the Design Economy. In the UK and in Scotland, our productivity has been stagnating since the recession. So what that means is that we've all been working harder than we were before 2008 to produce exactly the same amount of goods and services. So if we take Scotland as an example, Scotland's productivity rank amongst the 35 OECD countries has actually worsened during that period. So in 2006, Scotland was ranked 16th, but it's dropped to 19th in 2014. And what this comparatively poorer productivity means is that our living standards and our wages are increasingly stagnating. So it reminds me a bit of the line from the Lewis Carroll novel Through the Looking Glass, in which the Red Queen explains the nature of Looking Glass land to Alice by saying, now here you see, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place, which is exactly what we're doing at the moment. So whilst it's no panacea, at Design Council we believe that design plays an important role in improving the prosperity of the UK and contributing to improved productivity. But we think more could be done to support our existing design expertise, spread design expertise across different sectors, and spread design expertise across the country. So in terms of what I'm going to cover today, I'm going to provide a quick overview of Design Council and also talk a little bit about the changing nature of design during our 70-year history. I'm also going to quickly touch upon how we conducted the research before getting into the findings in some detail, with a particular deep dive on the figures for Scotland. So, Design Council was originally set up in 1944 by Winston Churchill's wartime government, with the aim of helping to promote the use of design in British industry to help the industry get back on its feet after the war. So the first high-profile project that the organisation ran was an exhibition in 1946 called Britain Can Make It, which promoted and displayed the best in contemporary British design. So things such as clothing, household goods, office equipment, and even public transport. But the exhibition's subtitle was Good Design and Good Business. So it was a significant part of the council's vision then, and it still is now. And incidentally, the exhibition was actually hosted at the V&A in London. So our two organisations have got a long history talking about the benefits of design for business. Now, our role has changed somewhat in the last 70 years, and whilst we still promote the use of design in British industry, we've also taken a broader perspective. So we also work with public services and in the built environment. And part of the reason for this change has been informed by the changing nature of design across the economy. So the use of design in the UK has evolved in the last 70 years and maybe longer, from being about driving more efficient production through to driving more consumption, so up to the 90s, to nowadays to being about influencing organisational strategy. So in order to get ahead of the competition, many executives are looking at design thinking and strategic design in order to provide their organisation with breakthrough innovations. So I won't dwell too much on this particular aspect, as there's a few speakers going to talk about it in more detail and with more expertise than me later. But the move towards the strategic use of design across many sectors of the economy has perhaps been one of the most marked changes in the discipline. So traditional definitions of design often focus on creating discrete solutions, so a product, a service, or a building. And strategic design applies some of the principles of traditional design, but to big challenge systemic issues, so things such as healthcare, education, and climate change. It helps to redefine what the problems are, it identifies opportunities for action, and helps to deliver more complete and resilient solutions. Likewise, we're also seeing the mainstreaming of design. So large businesses are increasingly buying up design capacity. So you have large consultancies like Accenture and McKinsey buying up design firms. But you also have the proliferation of design activity within organisations. So design's no longer the remit of just a specialised unit, such as the R&D unit in a large business, but it's becoming a mainstream sort of capability required of lots of different staff throughout the organisation, but also throughout supply chains as well. So the role of designers is therefore moving from being one about delivering creativity to enabling creativity in others. Now, in addition to all of this, we're seeing a disruption to policy-making processes. So complex problems are no longer being perceived as owned by either governments or industry or the public, and it's increasingly recognised that collective action is required to deal with some of the systemic issues that we increasingly face. So it's not enough, therefore, for governments or public sector bodies just to be innovative in isolation. There's a challenge for those organisations to disseminate control amongst a wider range of people as part of implementing design thinking or a co-design process. So in this sense, design has really evolved from being a discipline confined to a few sectors and a few people to being a multifaceted activity throughout the economy. So all of this provides context to the research that we conducted last year called the Design Economy. Just bear with me a second. So research is a key aspect of assessing the value of design, and it provides the evidence that Design Council needs in its role as a champion of design in the UK. So given the changing nature of design and our role as an organisation, we identified a need to update and expand upon our previous research in this area, which we've been conducting for several years. So the majority of past research looking at the economic value of design has either been conducted by Design Council, an organisation called Creative and Cultural Skills, or the Department for Culture, Media and Sports, who every year produce something they call the Creative Industries Economic Estimates. Now, the DCMS approach draws upon official data sources from the Office for National Statistics, and it uses standard industrial and occupational classification codes to identify the economic impact of various parts of the creative industries. In the past, Design Councils broadly followed the same approach, although we've tended to lean a bit more towards conducting primary research, so through telephone interviews and surveys. The challenge with that is that we don't necessarily get the same coverage and the same level of detail. So this time we wanted to do something that expressed a more up-to-date, robust and holistic account of what design contributes to the UK. So we commissioned an economic research consultancy called Trends Business Research to help us measure the impact of design. And what was produced is this report called the Design Economy, which we believe is the first report to really sort of get to grips with the way that design is used across the whole of the UK economy rather than as a single industry. And it values the whole spectrum of design as well, so from traditional product design through to more recent innovations such as service design and human-centered design. So the methodology that we used for this research aligns us a lot more closely with the approach used by DCMS. But where we differ is that we adopt a much more comprehensive definition of what design looks like. I mean, partly this is because DCMS have a remit to cover all of the creative industry, so not just design, but also music and film and crafts, for example. But what this means is that they restrict their definition of design just to one sector, so product, fashion and graphic designers. So we adopted a wider definition that includes design in areas such as the built environment, in digital, in engineering and in crafts. And we leveraged the methodology that DCMS use to sort of extract this information from official data sources to really uncover the true depth and breadth of design's impact. So the first step to doing that was to identify the occupations of those working in design across the economy. So we started with an extensive literature review, and we also consulted a wide range of stakeholders to identify what jobs designers are doing nowadays. And using the outcomes from this research, we then were able to identify the standard occupational classification codes within official economic data to identify who the designers are. And they're counted in our analysis regardless of what sector they work in, which is the first time this has been done. So on the screen here are some examples of the types of occupations that designers work in. It's not an exhaustive list, but it just gives you a flavour of some of the different areas that were covered. Doing this enabled us to then identify the industries that can be classed as design intensive. So what that means is we then look at sectors where 30% or more of the jobs in that sector are filled by designers. And this enables us to then identify designers in design industries, but also the other roles within those industries that are supporting that design function. So that might be roles such as administrative support, finance departments, distribution, a whole range of support functions. It also enables us to identify this whole new area of designers in other sectors. So these are sectors such as aerospace, finance, retail, where designers are all working but previously weren't being included in any figures. This collectively is what we refer to as the design economy. So that's how we did it. What did we find? Well, our research shows that there are over 72,000 design-intensive firms operating across the UK. So to put that into context, that's equivalent in size to the construction industry and also the legal and accounting sector. What's more, since 2010, the number of these firms has grown by 51%, which means that more than 24,000 new companies have been added to the industry footprint. This far exceeds the growth rate for the UK as a whole, where the general growth rate in businesses is just under 6% during the same period. These firms also create jobs. So there are 1.6 million people working in the design economy in the UK, which means it's equivalent to the 9th biggest employer in the country. Of these, 580,000 are working in these design-intensive sectors, which means that there are 1 million designers working in other sectors across the economy. So this just goes to show how embedded design has become in the UK economy. We also found indications that this is an area in demand. So between 2010 and 2014, we saw that design employment had grown by 22%, compared to just 6.1% growth in UK employment as a whole. So that's the size of the design economy, but what does it mean for the bean counters? So our research clearly shows that design is an economic driver, and we found sort of 3 key points related to this. So the first is that design contributes 72 billion in gross value added to the UK economy. So this is equivalent to the output of the construction and logistics sector. And it means that design contributes 7.2% of the UK's total GVA. Secondly, design also cuts across the UK economy. So 3/4 of this GVA that we're seeing here was actually generated by designers working outside of these design-intensive sectors, so in industries such as finance and banking, for example. And thirdly, we also see that design's contributions to the economy has been growing at a faster rate than the wider UK average. So growing 28% between 2009 to 13, compared to 18% in the UK generally. So what's driving this? Well, when we come to look at productivity, we can see that workers with a design element to their work are 41% more productive than the average UK worker. So what this means in real terms is that the average design worker will produce £47,400 in output per year, compared to the average UK worker who produces £33,600 per year. So in terms of what this looks like, this not only means that designers with a design element may be producing more in terms of quantity, but actually they're producing better quality and better value products and services as well. So I've got 2 case studies which I think sort of allude to this quite well. The first is a company based in the West Midlands called the Morgan Motor Company. Now, Morgan were established over 100 years ago in 1909. And they've since become famous all over the world for their luxury cars. So they use a unique blend of quality materials, craftsmanship, and produce high-performance vehicles. So as the CEO described to us during our research, he said, all our cars are handmade, hand-cut, hand-assembled. Our design team are in tune with Morgan's DNA. So here we can see that how design is integrated into the organisation, but clearly developing such a luxury good is a labour-intensive process. And the understanding of design here is perhaps in keeping with how we traditionally understand design. But in recent years, the company's adopted digital design technologies. And it has a well-equipped digital design department which has led to greater efficiencies in build times. So it's gone from building about 450 cars per year in the 1990s to over 1,000 cars a year nowadays. So here's an example of how design can lead to improvements in the quantity of goods manufactured. But if we take another example, this time a company called LiftShare. So LiftShare work within the same sort of area as Morgan, although they're more at the sort of user end. So they're focused on making car sharing normal. So LiftShare was designed to challenge traditional travel options. So they provide access to one-off lifts, to car sharing schemes for both individuals and corporate customers, as well as coaching options and applications to encourage behaviour change in order to improve the uptake of car sharing. So as this quote from the CEO illustrates, they're also interested in addressing the inefficiencies of modern car travel. So the overall design of the service and its digital interface has been very important to encourage the use of the system. And this is particularly critical when you're trying to affect behavioural change. What's happened is that 90% of customers using LiftShare continue to use them, which means that every day it removes 78,000 car journeys from British roads. So I think what this case study alludes to is how the growing use of new types of design, so digital design and service design, are helping to create potentially disruptive offerings to a range of sectors. So in this case, the automotive sector. So it's not just about improving the quantity of a goods or service, it's also about the value and the quality of them. So our research therefore suggests that there's a complementary and symbiotic relationship and benefit to having designers based in various parts of the economy. So what does all of this mean for Scotland? Well, design clearly plays a big role in the Scottish economy, and Scotland plays a big role in the UK's design economy. So our research shows that there are just under 4,000 design-intensive firms operating across Scotland. And these are primarily found in three sectors. So digital design, which accounts for 42% of firms, as well as architecture and the built environment, and a sector we refer to as multidisciplinary, so specialised design activities such as fashion or industrial design. And since 2010, the number of these firms has grown by 40%. So again, it far outstrips the growth rate for businesses across the UK as a whole, which is 5.7%. We also found that these firms employ just over 110,000 people. Now, what this means is that this accounts for about 7% of the UK's design economy workforce. So Scotland is clearly a magnet for designers. In terms of what these designers and these firms contribute to the Scottish economy, we found that design is worth 4.8 billion to the Scottish economy. And this value has grown 6.2% since 2010. So to put this into context, this is comparative to the performance of the West Midlands, which has a slightly larger population than Scotland, but is also noticeably greater than the GVA of Northern Ireland and Wales combined. So the figure also bodes well when we come to look at productivity. But first, I just want to provide some context, and I know the Minister earlier was talking about productivity as well. So despite Scotland lagging behind some of its OECD contemporaries in terms of productivity, there have been some recent improvements. So recent figures released by the Scottish Government suggest that output per hour worked in Scotland has grown 4.4% since 2007. And that's compared to just a growth rate of 0.2% for the UK as a whole. So Scotland is improving its productivity much quicker than the rest of the UK. But it comes with a warning. Scotland's productivity still falls behind the UK average, accounting for 97% of the UK average output per hour. So there's still some room for growth. Design is one area of the Scottish economy which bucks this trend. So when we look at the design economy specifically, we see that design economy workers in Scotland produce £43,000 a year in output, which is high compared to just over £33,000 across the UK generally. We also see that design economy workers in Scotland are among the best paid in the UK, so earning an average of £654 a week, compared to an average of £508 a week across the wider Scottish economy and £385 a week across the UK as a whole. The pay is also growing, so by almost 7% between 2010 and 2014, which is slightly faster than the average rate for the UK. So what this all indicates is that demand for these skills is growing in Scotland, and at these 2 points together, productivity and wages, suggest that this is a high value part of the Scottish economy. Now, in terms of where the design workforce is based, it's perhaps unsurprising that it tends to be concentrated in urban areas. So Edinburgh and Glasgow have the greatest concentration of design firms and employment. Now, this heat map shows a rank of Scottish constituencies according to their concentration of design firms and employment. So here you can see that wards in Edinburgh and Glasgow are ranked amongst the top, but the Dundee West, which is where we are now, is ranked 15th out of 59 Scottish wards and 168 out of 632 UK wards. So that means it's in the second to top quartile for the UK design economy in terms of the concentration of activity taking place. So there's a lot of activity happening here, which, as you know, this festival attests to. We're all aware of. So it's clear, but what's clear, I suppose, is that the design economy isn't evenly distributed across the country. So both within Scotland and then also when we come to look at the UK. So if we look at Scotland in relation to the rest of the UK, you can see that actually the design economy is very heavily concentrated in the southeast of England, and in particular in London. And London's home to 1 in 4 design firms, 1 in 5 employees, and 7 out of 10 of the top 10 local authorities with the greatest concentration of design activity. So as the Scottish and UK governments look to boost productivity and rebalance the economy, this research suggests that there's a major role for supporting the increased use of design across the country and across different sectors. So what next? So at Design Council, we're very interested in promoting the use of design across the country. So clearly there's evidence of the role that design can play in addressing part of the productivity puzzle and helping us to escape looking glass land. But it's by no means a panacea, and it's not going to solve all of our problems. So at Design Council, we're trying to help by supporting design expertise through our Spark Accelerator programme, which is the world's first accelerator programme for physical products. We're providing training to spread design skills across different sectors and regions, working with the private sector, with government and with public services. And we're also providing advice to help cities think more strategically about how they use design, not only in terms of their built environment, but also in terms of boosting their local economies. But we don't claim to have all the answers, and we're working with partners over the next year to answer a range of questions. So one of those is, how can we help those sectors where design is underused to fully realise its potential benefits? So many sectors across the UK have realised the benefits of using design, but yet some still haven't fully realised its potential. So for sectors such as health and social care and education, this is especially pertinent given the increasing constraint on resources, but the higher expectations of demand on those services and requirements for improved efficiencies and innovation. So service design, for example, is one innovation that might play a greater role in these sectors. We're also asking, how can we best support other cities and regions to grow their design economies and maybe encourage design clusters? So we've seen that design tends to be quite heavily linked to London and to the southeast of England. So more could be done to develop its potential in other cities, as is happening in Dundee. And we believe that this in turn could help contribute to the wider rebalancing of the economy, which is much needed. So we believe and we hope that design can help a flourishing private sector outside of London and also stimulate innovative public services. So I'm very interested in hearing your views of these questions, and the report is also available via our website as well, in case you're interested in any more information. So I'm happy to take any questions, but I'm also interested in hearing from you guys about what you think in relation to some of these questions. Thanks.